falling into hell. Ethan's consciousness flickered in and out like a dying ember. He no longer had a physical form, yet he could feel an unbearable force dragging him downward. His soul, tainted with the weight of his sins, spiraled into an abyss where light did not exist. A deafening silence surrounded him at first, but soon the echoes of agonized screams filled the void. It was a sound that did not come from outside but from deep within his being. It was his own torment, his own suffering, amplified and projected back at him from the walls of darkness that now encased him. Then the descent ended. Ethan crashed onto a cold, unyielding surface. His body, or what remained of his existence, convulsed in agony. The ground beneath him was neither earth nor stone but a pulsating, living entity that seemed to feed on his pain. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and an oppressive heat clawed at him, yet no flames could be seen. A grotesque voice echoed through the shadows, neither welcoming nor condemning. "Welcome, lost one. This is where you belong." Ethan staggered to his feet, his breaths ragged and uneven. The darkness around him shifted, revealing towering, monstrous figures, wardens of this forsaken realm. Their eyeless faces twisted into unreadable expressions as they loomed over him. He turned, looking for an escape, but all paths led deeper into the abyss. And then realization dawned upon him. There was no escape. There never was. A sharp, searing pain shot through his limbs. Chains, serpentine and burning, coiled around his arms and legs, dragging him forward. The first trial had begun. A new scream joined the chorus of the damned. This time it was his own. As Ethan plummeted deeper into the abyss, the darkness around him thickened, suffocating his senses. The cries of tormented souls echoed in the void, blending into a dreadful cacophony that seemed to pierce his very essence. When his fall finally ended, Ethan found himself sprawled on an immense, barren plain. The ground beneath him was not solid earth but a surface of writhing, seething flesh, bodies twisted together, moaning in eternal agony. Before he could even catch his breath, a chilling voice thundered from above. "You who have abandoned virtue, who have reveled in cruelty and deceit, shall now walk the path of suffering. Let the judgment of the damned begin." Suddenly the ground beneath him split apart. Ethan was dragged by an invisible force, pulled toward a towering mountain unlike anything he had ever seen. The mountain gleamed with an eerie sheen, its surface not made of rock but of razor-sharp blades protruding at every angle. The wind howled as countless souls writhed upon its slopes, their flesh shredded as they desperately tried to ascend. Those who fell were impaled, their screams lost in the chorus of suffering. Before he could resist, Ethan was hurled against the mountain's base. A scorching pain erupted from his back as he collided with the jagged surface. The blades tore into his flesh, slicing through muscle and bone with terrifying ease. He tried to steady himself, but every movement sent fresh waves of pain ripping through him. He gritted his teeth, trying to suppress a scream, but his body betrayed him. The agony was beyond anything he had ever known. Then came the climb. Ethan knew he had no choice. Something within him compelled him to ascend. With trembling hands, he grasped at the least jagged parts of the slope, only to have his palms flayed open. His blood mixed with the others upon the cruel mountain, turning the surface slick and treacherous. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The wind howled around him, carrying the scent of iron and burning flesh. With every inch he climbed, his body grew weaker. The agony in his limbs became unbearable, and yet, he could not stop. A force beyond comprehension drove him onward, denying him even the solace of collapse. He saw others above him, souls who had climbed higher, only to slip and be impaled upon the knives below. Their suffering was unending, their wounds never healing. Time lost meaning. Hours, days, perhaps years, blurred together in a ceaseless cycle of torment. Each step was a new nightmare, each breath a fresh wound. Yet just when Ethan thought he could bear no more, the torment changed. The mountain crumbled beneath him and he fell once more. This time he plunged into an ocean of flame. The fire was not like any earthly blaze. It was alive, hungry, and sentient. It coiled around him, seeping into his skin, scorching not just his body but his very soul. The pain was beyond the realm of physical suffering. It was an unraveling of his very being, as if the flames were burning away his identity, his past, his memories. His screams joined the chorus of the damned, lost amidst the infernal waves. Ethan thrashed, desperate to escape, but there was no surface to grasp, no refuge from the fire that consumed him. His flesh blistered, peeled, and regrew, only to be burned away again in an endless cycle of pain. It was an inferno without end, a punishment designed not only to destroy but to unmake. For what felt like an eternity, Ethan remained within the flames, his suffering unceasing. And in that place of endless agony, a single thought took root within him, gnawing at his mind. Was this truly the end, or was there yet another torment awaiting beyond the flames? Punishment 2, the frozen lake and the torment of the mind. Ethan had barely begun to recover from the excruciating pain of the mountain of blades and the sea of fire when the demonic guards dragged him forward once more. His body, covered in deep wounds and burns, trembled violently. He no longer had the strength to resist, but his suffering was far from over. Before him lay a vast, frozen lake, an expanse of ice stretching endlessly, its surface shimmering with a cold, deadly glow. The very air surrounding it seemed to bite into the flesh, each breath like inhaling thousands of invisible needles. The screams of other tormented souls echoed in the distance, lost in the chilling winds that howled across the icy wasteland. The demons hurled Ethan onto the ice. The moment his broken body touched the frozen surface, an unbearable agony surged through him. The cold was not merely physical, it seeped into his very soul, gnawing at the core of his being. His wounds, still raw from the previous torment, met the ice with a crackling sound, as if his flesh were being devoured by frost itself. His fingers, shaking uncontrollably, clawed at the surface in desperation, but there was no warmth to be found, only endless, merciless cold. Why? Why must this suffering continue? He muttered, his breath crystallizing in the air, his voice weak and breaking. But no answer came. Only silence. Then the true horror began. The ice beneath him started to shift, and shadowy figures emerged within it. They were familiar faces he had once known in his past life. People he had betrayed, harmed, and destroyed. Their expressions twisted in agony, their eyes filled with sorrow and hatred. "You did this to us," their voices whispered, echoing in his mind like 1,000 needles piercing his consciousness. Ethan's heart pounded in terror. He tried to shut his eyes, but the visions burned into his mind. The ice reflected not only their faces but also his own, twisted, monstrous, consumed by greed and cruelty. He saw himself from countless perspectives, reliving the pain he had inflicted upon others. Every deceitful word, every ruthless act, every selfish decision, each one replayed in his mind, magnified, until he could no longer distinguish reality from torment. The demons laughed in the distance. "The fire burned your flesh, but this place will burn your soul," Ethan screamed. He had thought physical pain was the worst form of suffering, but now he understood. True agony lay within the mind. The regret, the shame, the inescapable guilt weighed upon him like chains made of ice, dragging him deeper into despair. Time lost its meaning. Hours, days, centuries, he did not know how long he remained trapped in this frozen hell. His body should have died from the cold, but in this realm, death was not an escape. It was an impossibility. Finally, when he thought his sanity would shatter completely, the ice beneath him cracked. A great fissure opened, swallowing him whole. He plunged into the abyss, falling into darkness, his screams swallowed by the void. But his punishment was far from over. The torment had only just begun. Punishment 4, the crushing mountain and the bone grinder. Ethan no longer knew the passage of time. Here, past, present, and future were nothing but vague illusions. After being torn apart countless times by the beasts of hell, his soul was no longer whole. Pain had become a part of him, a curse clinging to him, never letting go. But hell never had an end. Just when Ethan thought he had experienced the pinnacle of suffering, he was dragged into another scene. A new place with an even more terrifying punishment. Before him stood a towering, pitch-black mountain. But it was not made of rock nor earth. It was a mountain of bones piled upon one another, bleached white and brittle, rattling eerily as the cold wind blew past. At its peak, he saw countless souls writhing in torment, their empty eyes devoid of life. Before he could comprehend what was happening, the ground beneath him trembled. Thick iron chains suddenly emerged from the abyss, coiling around his limbs. A tremendous force dragged him toward the mountain. He struggled, but it was futile. Hell did not tolerate resistance. Dragged across the sharp, jagged ground, Ethan felt his flesh being scraped away, leaving a trail of blood in his wake. He was hurled at the foot of the mountain, where other condemned souls shivered in terror. Then from somewhere deep in the darkness, a booming voice declared, "Those who once crushed others beneath their feet shall now be crushed in turn." Instantly, the mountain of bones began to tremble. Massive chunks of bone collapsed from above, burying Ethan beneath them. He screamed, but no one could hear him. The overwhelming weight of the countless skeletal remains crushed his ribs, pressing against his organs. It felt as if his heart would burst, his lungs flattened by the relentless force. Blood gushed from his mouth, staining the remnants of the long dead. But hell did not grant him death. Just as he thought his body had been completely pulverized, the weight lifted. The mountain drew back, like a cruel beast playing with its prey. Then for the second time it came crashing down. Boom. This time the agony was even worse. His spine cracked audibly, each vertebrae shattering under the pressure of thousands of corpses. Around him, the screams of other souls merged into a never-ending chorus of despair. Ethan had once stood at the pinnacle of power, trampling countless lives beneath his feet. Now he was being crushed beneath the very bones of those he had wronged. Karma spares no one. But his torment was far from over. When the mountain had inflicted enough suffering, Ethan was dragged out and thrown into another monstrous device. A colossal grinding mill, made of black stone, loomed before him, two massive slabs of rock slowly turning, crushing everything caught between them. Ethan's soul was forced into its center. His body was wedged between the enormous millstones. Alongside him, other damned souls shrieked in madness, but no one escaped. The grinding stones began to move inch by inch, pulverizing flesh and bone alike. The pain was beyond words. It felt as though every cell in his body was being ground into dust. His skull was being compressed, on the verge of exploding. His arms and legs were flattened, reduced to nothing more than an unrecognizable pulp. He could feel himself being torn apart, yet he also felt himself being reborn in the same instant, just to continue the endless cycle. He did not know how long this torment lasted. Could have been hours, days, or even centuries. But in hell, time had no meaning. Ethan wanted to cry, to scream, but he no longer had a mouth. His entire being was now nothing more than a crushed, unshaped mass of agony. And then, when the mill completed its final turn, he was whole once more. Only to begin the torment anew. And so the nightmare continued. Despair and loss of self. Pain was no longer something measurable. It had surpassed the limits of flesh, bones, and nerves. It seeped deep into Ethan's soul, becoming a permanent part of his existence. Something that would never cease. Ethan had endured every cruel punishment. The mountain of blades and the sea of fire burned his body to ashes, the frozen lake numbed his emotions, the hell beasts tore his soul apart, the crushing mountain and bone grinder reduced him to dust. But the most terrifying thing was not these punishments, it was their endlessness. There was no escape. No end. Ethan no longer remembered how long he had been here. A day? A year? 1,000 years? In hell, time had no meaning. There was no sunlight, no darkness to mark day and night. Only endless suffering with no moment to breathe, no pause to think. He once had a name, Ethan. But now that name meant nothing. It was just a faint echo in his mind, a memory eroded by time and agony. He no longer knew who he was, no longer remembered why he was here. Bit by bit, his identity was torn away, worn down like a tiny grain of sand in an infinite ocean. A deteriorating soul. Ethan began to forget himself. He no longer remembered his own face. What color were his eyes? What did his voice sound like? The memories of himself faded like wisps of smoke, carried away by the infernal winds. He had once had desires, ambitions. But now, they were nothing more than distant shadows, as unreachable as the dreams of a man long dead. From the darkness, voices echoed, whispers, mocking laughter, the weeping of souls trapped in the same fate. Who are you? He did not know. Where did you come from? He could not remember. You were once human. But now you are merely a fragment of hell. Was this the true punishment? Not the torment of flesh but the decay of the soul? When no one remembered him, when even he could no longer recognize himself, did he still exist? Death would have been mercy. But hell did not allow that. Wandering in the void. At some point Ethan realized he had stopped struggling. He no longer screamed in pain. No longer tried to escape. No longer felt anger or despair. He simply existed as a formless entity swallowed by an abyss with no end. He felt himself dissolving into hell, becoming a part of it. No past, no future. Only an eternal present. A present without hope, without change, without anything but empty existence. Perhaps this was the deepest layer of hell. There was no fire, no torture, no monstrous howls, only a silent void, where souls faded away like ashes carried by the wind. Ethan had once been a man. But now he no longer knew if he even existed at all. Light in the darkness. In the endless darkness of hell, where Ethan's soul had shattered and lost its way, something stirred within him. A faint glimmer, a fragment of memory weaving through the layers of suffering. Was this an illusion? Another cruel torment designed by hell? He had lost everything, his form, his senses, even his awareness of self. Existence in this wretched prison was nothing but an endless void, a drifting soul devoured by time. But that light, it was so fragile, so distant, like a lone star against the vast black sky. Voices from the past. Then Ethan heard a voice, not the sinister whispers of hell, but something warm, something gentle, like a soft breeze brushing against his ruined soul. Ethan, do you remember me? A faint memory surfaced. A familiar figure, yet distant, like a life he had once lived but long forgotten. Someone important to him. You once sought the light. You once knew what it meant to have compassion. Compassion? Ethan nearly laughed. Those things had been crushed long ago. Had he not become a demon himself? Had he not trampled over everything to climb to the top of power? What was compassion when he had committed countless sins? Yet the voice did not fade. It seeped into the cracks of his soul, soft yet unwavering. Hell is not the end. But you must find yourself again. Images rushed back. An innocent child, a young man filled with aspirations, a person who once knew love, who once felt the warmth of kindness. Memories that hell thought it had buried were now rising from the abyss. The final resistance. The darkness screamed. Hell did not want to let go. Invisible forces surged forward, trying to bury Ethan once more. But this time he was no longer a drifting, lost soul. He felt something, a flickering flame deep within. But no, hell no longer terrified him. The worst torment was not the punishment itself, but losing oneself. And he realized, hell had never truly imprisoned him. He had been the one who imprisoned himself. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Ethan spoke. I am still here. Immediately, light flared within his soul. Not a blinding, overwhelming radiance, but a small yet unyielding ember. And from that ember Ethan felt his own strength. The darkness bows. Ethan's soul began to change. The invisible chains binding him loosened. The agonized wails of hell faded. One last wave of agony crashed over him as if testing him one final time. And then, silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was no longer in darkness. Before him lay a path. 6 great gates stood ahead, leading to the 6 realms of rebirth. He had escaped hell. But where would his fate lead him now? Standing before the 6 realms of rebirth, Ethan's footsteps came to a silent halt. Before him stood 6 colossal gates, towering like unyielding sentinels blocking his path. Each door emanated a distinct energy, each leading to a different fate, a new journey. There were no longer flames scorching his flesh, no blades piercing his body, no tormented screams echoing through the abyss. Yet, a new kind of terror took hold, the fearsome emptiness of destiny itself. 6 gates, 6 paths. Ethan lifted his gaze, feeling the pull of karmic forces calling from beyond each threshold. The first gate, the realm of heaven, Deva realm, a blinding radiance flooded from beyond the gate, carrying a warmth and serenity indescribable in mortal words. Ethereal hymns resounded, painting visions of a world filled with bliss. Yet, beneath the golden glow, Ethan sensed a distant coldness, a realm where pleasure dulled the pursuit of enlightenment. The second gate, the human realm, Manusa realm, a humble, unadorned door stood in contrast to the grandeur of heaven and the horrors of hell. Beyond it lay an endless road under an open sky, the realm of fleeting joys and inevitable suffering, but also the only place where true awakening could be attained. The third gate, the realm of Azura realm, a battlefield stretched beyond this threshold. The clashing of steel, the roar of warriors, the piercing glares of those forever locked in conflict. Power, pride, unyielding defiance. Yet those who entered this world were doomed to eternal struggle, ensnared by their own insatiable ambition. The fourth gate, the animal realm, Tyriagini realm, a primal energy surged forth, carrying the scent of earth and blood. Beasts with vacant eyes prowled, driven only by instinct, knowing neither virtue nor vice, only hunger and fear. A life devoid of intellect, choice, and freedom. The fifth gate, the realm of hungry ghosts, Preta realm, shadows and an eerie chill seeped through the cracks. Gaunt figures with hollow eyes wandered aimlessly, their skeletal hands reaching for sustenance that would never satisfy. No matter how desperate their hunger, everything they touched crumbled to dust. Endless craving became the shackles of their existence. The sixth gate, the realm of hell, Naraka realm, the very place he had just escaped from, remained open. Flames still roared, cries of agony still echoed. A part of him shuddered. Was his karmic burden still too heavy? Was there a chance he would be dragged back into the abyss once more? The choice of fate. Ethan stood at the crossroads. The 6 paths lay open before him, yet no one could give him the answer. There was no judgment, no decree. He had once believed himself invincible. He had once fallen to the depths of suffering. He had once awakened in the throes of despair. But now he felt smaller than ever before in the face of the endless cycle of rebirth. A single question echoed in his mind. Where will you go? Ethan closed his eyes. He was no longer afraid. He had experienced it all: happiness, suffering, corruption, punishment, and even redemption. He had seen the nature of power, desire, and ignorance. But had he truly learned enough to take the right path? His steps moved forward, slow but resolute. The gate of fate awaited his answer. Choice and destiny. In the boundless void, Ethan stood before the 6 paths of reincarnation. 6 gates leading to 6 different existences. No more chains bound him, no more flames scorched his flesh or blades tore through his skin. Yet a different kind of fear crept into his heart, the fear of choice. Everything had ended, and yet it was only just beginning. Weighing the 6 paths. Before each gate, Ethan felt a distinct aura. Every path carried a destiny, a new cycle of existence. The heavenly realms gate revealed a golden expanse, where gentle light bathed all in serenity. Ethan sensed tranquility, bliss, and the distant echoes of celestial hymns, like bells tolling from nirvana. But beneath this divine beauty lay an invisible trap, a world of pleasure, where souls were mesmerized by indulgence and forgot the path to true liberation. The human realm's gate was much simpler, devoid of grandeur, yet it carried an undeniable sense of familiarity. Ethan saw ordinary people living, loving, suffering, growing, and eventually dying. This was the only path where true enlightenment could be found. But did he have the courage to return? The Azura realm's gate burned with a raging inferno. Within, warriors fought endlessly, their souls consumed by jealousy and ambition. Power, glory, and eternal conflict. Ethan had once craved dominion over others, but now he understood. Victory did not bring salvation. The animal realm's gate opened to a world of primal instincts. Creatures that knew neither good nor evil lived only to eat, fear, and survive. A life bound by ignorance and instinct, devoid of choice. The hungry ghost realm's gate exuded an eerie chill. Gaunt, wretched spirits wandered endlessly, tormented by insatiable hunger and unquenchable thirst. Ethan recalled the suffering he endured in hell, and he knew this was not a path he wished to tread. The hell realm's gate, the very place he had just escaped, remained open. The flames still roared, the darkness still loomed. Ethan dared not look back, yet he could not deny its presence. If his karma had not yet been repaid in full, was this the path he would be forced to walk once more? A soul amidst the currents of karma. Ethan hesitated. He had lived through it all: glory, downfall, agony, despair, and awakening. But had he truly learned enough to make the right choice? Memories of past lives surged through his mind. He saw the burning eyes of those he had trampled upon, the tears of those he had betrayed. He remembered the despair of falling into hell, the sensation of flesh being torn apart, bones ground to dust. Yet, amidst that suffering, he also recalled the faintest glimmer of light, the unyielding will, the forgotten compassion, the chance to atone. Whatever path he chose, he was no longer the man he once was. Is destiny preordained, or is he its master? Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the currents of karma flowing within him. Destiny was not an arbitrary selection. It was the culmination of all he had done, thought, and felt. The first step would determine everything. He opened his eyes. He stepped forward. The 6 gates stood tall, awaiting the fate he would carve for himself. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, the image of a black cat flashed through his mind. Its golden eyes gleamed in the darkness, like a flickering lantern in the endless night. No sound, no warning, just an apparition, passing through the void like an illusion amidst oblivion. Ethan smiled faintly. He understood.